Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de more stuff in the realm of categories of items that you shouldn't spend money on, or maybe I should say, shouldn't spend more than the bare minimum of money on. Hey, Zempak here. So as my life has gotten easier over time, I have more time to think about what it is that truly makes me happy, right? And over that period, I've definitely come to the conclusion that joy comes from less from stuff, more from circumstances that we find ourselves in, right? Having money is sure important, but it isn't the most important thing, right? Having the right mentality is. So in an effort to further synthesize my own life philosophy of being efficient, not minimal, I'll talk about a few additional categories of items that I think costs can be cut down on. Last time, I think my list of things to cut were clothes, eating out, and subscriptions. Did you guys find that easy or hard to achieve? Curious, but I gotta tell you, this list won't be any easier to achieve. Anyway, comment, like, and subscribe, or whatever you'd like, social media, blah, blah, buzzwords. Okay, do what you want. Agree, disagree, do the internet thing. I'll be great regardless. So, first point, right off the bat, I'd say cut housing expenditure. Okay, this is usually a person's largest expenditure and the biggest financial burden. And guess what? What a person actually needs and what the market is trying to sell you are totally separate things, right? One common fact is that the average single-family home has increased in size significantly over time, from something like 1,500 square feet to 2,500 square feet over the last 30, 40 years. And guess what? Sure, Americans are probably getting a little chunkier now compared to then, but the average family size certainly has not increased at all. It's still like 2.3 or something. So what the heck, like why would anybody need so much house? The answer is people do not need that so much house, right? Builders keep building bigger and bigger just so that they can charge you more. That's all there is to it. So think about what level of space you actually need. Look, I love the US, so I'm not saying, hey, we should all live in super dense, like bunk bed style, multi-person to a room housing, like in Hong Kong, right? But on average, almost 1,000 square feet per person is way, way, way too much. If you've ever looked up a heat map of where a family spends their time in their house, you would see that the vast majority of single-family homes are just wasted space that only gets used like once a year for guests or whatever, right? Like like 50% of the house only gets used very, very seldomly. You know what you can do instead of paying for a house where half of it barely gets used? Just get a much smaller space, okay? Downsize, and then if your family comes to visit that one time a year, use all that money you've saved and get them a hotel nearby, or you still be making money off of this setup. Good Lord, please figure out what amount of space you'd actually need and buy that, because extra space is unnecessary and frankly might even lead your inner hoarder tendencies to come out, okay? Point number 2, buy less motor vehicles. All right, I'll caveat that with, when possible. Look, when I first retired, I was simply determined to be entirely carless because I picked a location in a city where other transportation options exist, right? But, I live in the United States, and generally this is a huge country. I do get that most people do not have the option of being just completely carless, right? So again, I'll say, really think about what you need, right? A significant amount of American households have multiple vehicles to the effect of basically one per person per household. And the more well-off might even have more than that, more than that level of vehicle per person just for fun. Now, I get it, if you're a person who loves cars, you might want multiple cars, right? But for the vast majority of people, it would probably make more sense to simply move to a more strategic location so that, say, out of 2 working people in a household, at least one doesn't need to drive to work, right? Or so the kid or kids don't need to drive to high school. So now, if you're very well off to the point where you can pay for all your vehicles in cash and have a healthy reserve for car-related maintenance costs, sure, you're off the hook on this one. But again, for the vast majority of Americans, right, car notes and related costs are literally the second highest of monthly costs right after housing. So striking at these items would actually make a real difference in your wallet. You can have a car, okay? Heck, even I have one right now because wifey and I picked a new city to live in where not having a car at all is not feasible, right? But every time I'm tempted by the idea of buying another convertible for myself just for fun, I tell myself, look, I actually can afford it, but still an additional car just becomes a toy rather than a necessity, okay? And frankly, don't I have enough toys, okay? So find your own rationale, but this is an area ripe for cost cutting for most people. Okay. Oh, third point. I'm gonna pick a weird one, maybe to some, but makes sense to me, and that is branded items. That's anything. It could be food like oatmeal to jackets and dresses, you know, whatever. Honestly, have you ever been able to taste the difference between branded cereal versus a store brand cereal? I mean, hey, if you can, good for you. I mean, if you really think the Quaker's Oats just tastes better or has more nutrition even though it's just a grain, go for it. I know personally I cannot, so I'm totally fine with the store brand. It costs like half as much. Now, I know in absolute terms, food brand differentials are small enough to be kind of negligible, right? But it's the principle here that matters, right? Way easier to explain are the branded clothes that the nouveau rich all seem to be into. Look, I'm not saying that you can't get yourself something nice. I know I have, right? Like, you know, I have actually quite a few branded items. But if I go buy an item, it is because either I think it's uniquely beautiful or very, very functional, right? Not because it has some brand logo front and center. After all, if you walk around all decked out with like Gucci or Prada logos out there, you're just a walking advertisement for the brand, aren't you? And if I was gonna do that, I'd at least expect to be paid for the job, not having to pay a premium just so that I could advertise for somebody else's brand. Think about how valuable you are, how special you are. Surely you are better than just some fashion brand that pretty much anybody with some cash can get, right? And please remember, for categories like clothes, most people are absolutely paying a very high premium just for the brand itself. And remember that real rich people actually do not flaunt their wealth, right? It's only the new rich, the rather uncouth in societies that are still so close to being poor that they have to show off, you know, in front of their other still poor brethren, right? In these kind of ostentatious manners. So please learn to have some real class. Don't follow the fakers. Now, in conclusion, I mean, I always feel like there are always more things that I can probably cut when it comes to, you know, cost, right? But these days, okay, maybe I'm a little hypocritical. After all, I still have a car and I might get a scooter instead of a second one, right? And my house right now is the biggest one I've ever lived in, though that's not saying too much since mostly in my life I've lived in apartments in very dense cities, right? So, you know, biggest house for me is probably not the biggest house according to other people. Still, I get it. There are circumstances like COVID. Didn't I like having a big or large-ish yard during the last few years of relative isolation? Sure, I did. But I can also easily afford this large house, right? And that's not the case for most people. The reality is most people have more space or car or swag items than they need. So to be truly free and not be owned by the crap you're supposed to own, downsize, get more efficient. Now, nobody can tell you how few of these things you actually need, right? But if you do the mental work on yourself and get there on your own, I promise you, you'll feel better, okay? And you'll feel more free. Cheers. À la prochaine.